Hey guys, had a mixed morning this morning. Played 3 games on my tablet, and in 2 of them I lost through basic blunders, just leaving pieces undefended, just not taking my time. And in both instances I know that if I had applied the Goldfish method, then I would have avoided those mistakes. So what I'm going to try and do now is I'm just going to start a 30-minute rapid game. Okay, and we've got a player rated 1500 in rapid. So we have e4. I'm just going to play something normal. We'll play e5. And we have the King's Gambit. Well. Okay, this is an opening that I'm not very familiar with at all. I don't know the theory. F6 would seem to be kind of normal, so that if the pawns swap off, I haven't lost one of my central pawns. Queen out to h4 comes with check. But that would probably prompt the pawn to move forward, and then my queen will just have to retreat. Do I want to accept the gambit? Let's accept it and see what happens. So now I have lost one of my central pawns. Okay, we have knight to f3. So defended, undefended. Queen's defending a bunch of stuff, so is the bishop. The knight's defending that. Okay. So there's an undefended pawn in the middle of the board. If I was to play knight to f6, then that would probably invite the pawn to advance. So maybe we don't want to do that. On my side of the board, this pawn is also undefended. But it's gambited pawn, so I'm not going to worry too much about trying to defend that one. So let's just develop normally. Knight c6. Okay, and d4 makes perfect sense. This pawn's still undefended. This one is defended twice. We know that everything down here is defended at least once, and so are these. The knight is also defended. Might be a good time to think about bringing out my light square bishop, maybe and pin the knight. If I play this, what about d5? And then this square would not be safe because it's attacked by that knight. So that could cause me issues. d5 is an option. Then if takes, I can recapture with a queen. The queen would then be liable to get kicked as well with development by the knight. Again, knight to f6 would walk into this, but then the knight can go here, and that would prevent the advance of that pawn. I don't see any problem with that. Also, if the knight does go to here, it's defending this pawn as well. So I'd like to think about completing my development as well. Get this dark square bishop out, maybe to there. I think that is a good opportunity, but before we do anything, let's just check what's defended and undefended. Right, all those pawns are okay. That knight's defending that pawn, that knight's defending that pawn, and so is the queen. Bishop's defending that. So everything in my opponent's camp is now defended. So I think pinning the knight makes sense, because what that effectively does is, because this knight's now pinned, it means that this pawn here is no longer defended. The knight cannot move. So we're going to see bishop out to block the pin. If the bishop does come out, I cannot capture the knight, because if knight captures and say I take the bishop, then the knight can jump back and recapture, so I lose a piece that way. If this pawn advances now, oh no, I still do have d5 because this knight is pinned, so we have to remember what's pinned. Okay, this was kind of to be expected. Can't go there because of the knight, so that's out. Likewise there because of the knight and the queen. So what do? Do I drop back to e7? Do I go all the way home? So I can't advance forwards, and this square just looks not very enticing. I'm going to bring my knight back to e7. Still pinned. Defended. Defended, defended. Defended 3 times. Oh, actually, that one doesn't count. And these pawns are defended, and so is the knight. So currently, this knight is the only real target. So now I'd like to castle and centralize a rook. Knight is still pinned. Is my opponent going to castle short? Okay, I'm going to castle, I think. This pawn is now en prise to that bishop. Do I have to worry about this pawn advancing? No, because I can capture there. If I capture, pawn captures, I can capture another pawn. So I could get 2 pawns for a knight if I wanted to. But I think castling makes sense now. Another option might be just to push d6. d6 is not a bad move. It liberates my bishop to come out on this diagonal. It stops this pawn from advancing. And if I play there and we have bishop checks, I can just block with my own light square bishop. So I'm going to play d6 now. If bishop comes out and grabs that pawn, then it doesn't have so many options. Another option is to bring my other bishop out and pin another knight. Okay, if I capture this knight now, we get doubled pawns on there, but they're not isolated. Not as long as there's a d pawn there. So that might actually benefit my opponent. Then he's got 2 pawns here that he can use to push up and mess up my position. So let's develop the bishop, and there's no real benefit to trying to protect this pawn, or could I play knight g6 and protect it? I'm up a pawn right now, and this knight is doing nothing there. Okay, let's play this knight to here. Just a quick scan of the board. My pieces are pretty well defended now. This bishop's out solo. These knights are all protected, that's fine. And that pawn. And now this knight is defending that pawn. I also have a check here. The bishop can't block the check because of my pawn here. It's not a bad move. But if I check, surely then the king will just dodge into the corner. So the point of this goldfish technique is to practice drilling your vision of the board, being able to spot what's defended and undefended, and also the tactics that can result from that. Right, so with the queen here, what's changed? This pawn is still defended by the bishop. These pawns are all defended, knight's defended. Bishop to here with check is still valid. I don't think I want to capture that knight, so I think this move makes some sense. Might also be able to drop my bishop into there if I, at some point, take advantage of this wayward pawn. Okay, the king has moved. Now, is there any reason not to develop this bishop and pin the other knight? If he kicks me, then I think that's okay. I can't retreat to here because then, well, we have that, but then I have en passant. That might be good. Okay. I think we're all right. Let's try that. Maybe queen d7 might come. If you can hear some gentle snoring in the background, I have a fat Labrador asleep on the couch next to me. So this knight is pinned, which means that all these squares that it would normally be guarding are unguarded. Right, that's okay. So the idea was just to drop my bishop back here. So it's a slight waste of a move. I can't castle out of check. I could drop my knight here and then see if he wants to exchange his bishop for my knight. Then my knight might come into that square, and that's not a bad square. Okay, so knight defends that. Bishop is currently undefended. This bishop is alright, it's defended by the pawn. This pawn is technically undefended. My queen's got those, king's got that, and this is undefended here. Now if bishop takes knight, I've got queen takes. Yeah, so you want to drill this discipline until it becomes second nature. And it's just a really handy approach that playing on the computer can facilitate. So now I can drop my bishop back to here, because see my knight's blocking that square, but the pawn can't advance and capture just yet. So let's do that. Another option is to swap off my bishop for the knight. Maybe that's not too bad. My bishop doesn't have a lot of scope because white's got these light pawns in the middle of the board controlling these squares, so I can't ever go back to them as things stand. If he wants to take my bishop, I could also... No. See, I can't counterattack his bishop because then he takes the knight, and if I recapture, I lose my bishop. So, bishop h5. How viable is that? I think it's okay. Because like we say, if pawn goes there, I can capture en passant. That really opens up white's kingside. Because I haven't castled yet, sometimes it's a benefit not to castle. Now I might even have options of castling long, and then using my pawn majority on the king side, because I've got 4 pawns against 2. I could start throwing pawns at the issue. Knight to here might work, it gives my bishop another square. And if knight takes, I've got pawn takes, not too bad. This bishop's doing a nice job of guarding these squares here. Okay, so we capture now en passant. And I've just won a second pawn. Can I do anything to harass this pinned knight? I think knight e5 might be a good square. It's actually also an outpost because there's no pawns here that can advance and kick it away. So That's good. Attacks the pinned knight. It also gives my bishop an escape square if it wants it, but currently the bishop's doing a good job of maintaining this pin against queenie. I can't move this knight because it's currently pinned as well, but this knight can come here. That might be good. If I capture now, and the queen recaptures, the pin is broken. If I play knight here, bishop captures. I can't capture with a knight, it would have to be the pawn. That's not brilliant. So if takes, then queen or rook captures on there. Means this pawn's a goner. I could simply avoid the issue by playing my bishop to there, or even maybe to there. So I'd like to maintain this pin. So I don't want to give the queen an easy way to move away, because that capture would just be obvious queen captures. Okay, so what's undefended on their side? Oop. That's queen's defending that and that and that. Rook's also defending the knight. This pawn is actually undefended. The knight's got that one, the pawn's got that one, the knight's defending that, and so is the queen. So we have two potential target pieces there. If I drop my bishop back, we could have bishop takes and then maybe pawn takes. That's not a terrible situation, but I do like this bishop. I would like to keep it. Can't move my knight there, just gets taken. Could just proceed with my plan. Say knight here. Then if bishop captures, I can capture the knight with check. Rook takes, knight takes, queen takes. That's okay, it means I get I win the exchange in that instance. So let's think about this knight there, attacking the queen. And also attacking this undefended pawn. No, I can't take with a bishop then. So if knight here, knight, yeah, so knight there attacks the queen. That's no good. Knight to here was the move, wasn't it? Then bishop takes with check and a fork on the king and queen, which would force the rook to recapture. I then capture with my knight, queen recaptures, and I retake the bishop on there. Right, let's have a go at that. So knight to here is the move. Somebody left a comment as well today saying, how do you get out of a rut? You know, if you've been playing quite well, beating a lot of opponents, and then you suddenly kind of dry up, how do you deal with that? So I think that religiously applying this technique is definitely one way to go about that. So I'm not concerned if bishop captures now. That's all right, because we have a fork. And that's a forcing move, because if bishop takes, king's in check. So white has to get out of check on the next move, and also the the queen's under attack. So rook takes bishop would be forced, and then I win the exchange. Undefended pieces. That is defended. That's defended. And on my side, 2 pawns. Yep. Also be really nice to be able to advance this pawn if I can with check and an attack on the rook, so that would be a fork, but I would need something like a knight, say on this square. So that might have been another option actually. Instead of moving my knight here, could have moved my knight to h4, preparing a pawn push, and it can't be captured by that knight because it's pinned to the queen. And what's interesting about this, so what's really significant about this board right now, is just how open White's kingside is. So he's got no f-pawn and no g-pawn. So the king has very, very little cover over there. So what I need to be doing is playing on this side of the board, rather than the queen side of the board. So it's just good to remind yourself of all the undefended pieces on the board that could be potential targets, but neither of my pawns is really threatened right now. Let's just see what my opponent chooses to do. Also notice that if he takes my knight here, right, and I capture his queen, he then actually has this move with a fork, because the knight wouldn't be there, the bishop would no longer be defending that square, and the knight would be protected by this rook. So if he does that, I would have to maybe recapture with a knight, but then queen takes bishop, you see. Well, then I take this bishop as well. That's interesting. Knight takes, queen takes, bishop. That is definitely an idea. f6 would help protect against that. Oh no, I can't capture with this knight because it's pinned. That's the other thing I need to bear in mind. Yeah, my knight is pinned and that knight is currently pinned. So if knight takes, say knight takes, if I take the queen, okay, good. Well, that's better. So now we can do that. And should we take the rook now? Or just win the bishop? I think we have to take the rook. If queen recaptures, I grab the bishop. This knight's still pinned, so I would like to castle or kick this bishop away. Okay, right. Now, some stuff has happened. I'm glad my opponent didn't see that queen sacrifice line. Alright, I'm currently a pawn up. Is there any reason not to capture the bishop right now? Okay, so that is actually attacked and undefended. These pawns are also undefended. The knight is defending that, pawn's defending that. That's undefended, of course. So I think capturing the bishop makes perfect sense. there's no real threat. I mean, so we could have rook comes across, then I can just push, or even just push my queen forward. Let's take the bishop. I'm expecting white to snatch the pawn. Then maybe queen out to here might be a good idea. Just defending these pawns, which are currently under... Well, that's defended by the king. Knight is defending that pawn. That'd be a nice pawn to capture. Knight's also defending the bishop, and these two pawns are not defended. Okay, so queen's captured. So we have two vulnerable pawns. We have a pinned knight. So there. Yeah, I think queen to here makes a lot of sense, because it then allows me to castle, and that would put my rook on d8, then protecting the knight. The knight could just move away anyway. So I think queen to there, and oh no, queen there would undefend that pawn, and that could be ugly. So I need to defend this pawn without moving my queen. So I think g6 seems to be the way forward. Also got rook g8 is an idea. Might be just as good actually. So I do want to castle, but I can't move my queen away right now because of this pawn. So maybe castling kingside is actually better. However, that means that I'm leaving my king on this very open side of the board. Yes, I've got some protective pawns, and I've got a knight that can come to its natural square on f6, where it can also be kicked away. Decisions, eh? I think castling might be the most sensible move here. Let's do it. Down to 15 minutes. But this now means that this knight is no longer pinned. This pawn is protected only by the queen. Okay. This pawn is defended by the knight, which is not pinned. Defended, and then... yeah, okay. So I'm thinking one idea, queen f6, like I said before, defends this pawn. If pawn pushes, I can actually capture with the knight, so that's not a real issue. If I play queen out here though, it does undefend this pawn. But I am up a whole piece at this point. So what am I up? I'm up an exchange and a pawn. I could just push g6 now. That dispels that threat, and also takes one square away, one more square away from the light squared bishop. So let's say if queen here, right, then queen captures the loose pawn. I've got a knight in trouble. I can push and give check, also threatening this pawn here. So if his queen is there on c7, I come here, check. The king has to move forward. Doesn't really help. So this is a checkmate threat, so I absolutely have to do something about that. I think g6 seems solid. So let's go with that. Now I might think about pushing pawns at this side of the board, but there's not a huge amount of point. I think strategically, I've got some material advantage. I want to be attacking this king here. And that means moving my knight up the board and getting my queen involved. Another approach is simply to simplify. Okay, so we have a pawn push. All right. One idea is to kick the bishop. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So there's a threat against the knight. If pawn pushes, takes, the knight has to move. That would undefend this piece. So currently that's defended only by the knight. That's defended only by the queen. That's currently undefended still. These pawns are okay. So knight b6 attacks this, but it's a defended piece. Doesn't really improve my knight, does it? I don't want to move my rook there, because then I can't move my knight away. So that pawn push could then be very good for my opponent. I could push f6, but then if pawn pushes, again I have to move the knight, and it hasn't got great squares. I kick the bishop, he plays that. I take the bishop, he takes my knight. Fine. Okay, let's kick the bishop. If he retreats, I've got a double kick, and then he's actually trapped. So retreating that way is not an option, because I play here, and if he moves back, I've got that. So the bishop, I think, is going to move back, probably in line with my king here, I'd imagine. But then again, I've got b5. Okay, we've got an exchange. Simply going to recapture. My queen's still defending that. That's undefended. That's defended twice. That's undefended. But now I am up a clear exchange. A nice long light square diagonal towards the king. This knight is currently defending the pawn on d5. I can't move my queen to here. I mean, I can right now, but I can't swap it off, because remember, this pawn is actually pinned. So undefended pieces, that's okay. 1, 2, and then this is pinned. We have to remember that, so let's put that in blue. The game's going all right. He can't move his knight right now. So, right then. So what's he thinking about? Okay, so he's now double defended this pawn, and he may be thinking about pushing with this one. But then if I take, he can't recapture, because I've got queen takes rook. I think bringing my other rook across would be a good idea. Maybe even centralise both of my rooks on d8 and e8. No, I can't capture that rook. Knight's defending it. So this knight is actually very well placed, guarding these squares here. I could move my queen to like f5 now, because we've got undefended pawns there. It's also nicely attacking that, so it means the queen might be tied to the defence of that pawn there. Also gets my queen out of the firing line of that rook, so let's do that. Now, if this pawn advances, this pawn is under attack by the queen. I can't see the queen wanting to come all the way down here, allowing me to get in and grab that pawn. So I'm not too worried about that right now. I think maybe b5, b4 would be good to move this knight off its fairly secure little place. Knight's doing a good job. It's defending 3 other pieces. It's defended itself. That's not defended. That's not defended. That's defended by the queen. The queen's busy defending lots. Okay, there we go. So another rook move. So now is he thinking about pushing this? So should we play like rook f to e8? Yeah, I think that's sensible. Or even this. But I'm not sure I want these pawns advancing too far up the board. I'd like to keep these two here if I can, so that they can just snatch anything that dares to venture any further forward. So I think moving my rooks now seems to make sense. So rook f8. Yeah. These are my undefended pawns. But again, they're on the wrong side of the board. I'm not too concerned about that. This one's doing a good job of guarding that square, and this guy's guarding that square. Queen's tied to the defense of that. It's also defending the rook right now. So currently, rook takes isn't an option because it's attacked twice and only defended once. So I can't do that. I think next, maybe rook a to d8 seems to be sensible. I'd be very happy to exchange some rooks. Any exchanges right now are good. And also we've got to bear in mind that my queen is attacking this pawn here, which kind of positionally doesn't really make a big difference. So the area of concern is that we've got these pawns fairly well advanced. I just need to make sure that we protect them. Okay, now that's interesting because it's actually broken the defense of the pawn by the rook. See? Rook is now not defending the pawn. So I could potentially maybe take with the queen, possibly exchange queens. Okay, however, the knight has that move. Right, so if I captured with a queen, for example, and then knight goes in there with check, no, then queen captures knight. So let's say queen takes. Knight here, not a problem, I grab the knight. Queen takes, rook takes, knight moves in there, I'm in check, and then I lose my rook. So let's think about this again. Queen takes, rook takes, check. I've lost a rook. Yeah, it's no good. So I think possibly something like knight g7 just gets rid of that threat altogether of the check. See, with my king in this position, it's vulnerable to attack. If I simply move my king now, then both of these ideas become viable. So let's do that. Knight's also attacking this loose pawn here, but it's not one of my favourite pawns. If it does take it, I could always even grab the c2 pawn and attack the knight again, as well as the other pawns. Oh, so the game's going alright. It does feel a bit tense. But this is kind of this is like the do or die mental attitude that I'm trying to develop with chess. In the games I played this morning, it also didn't help that I was using my tablet, which is usually I do alright, but it means you can't draw the arrows and the highlights. But it's good to work out these positions. So, I mean, right now then, as things stand, obviously if knight takes, I can't grab the pawn. Ooh, that's interesting. So what are you thinking? Rook across? That's not viable. We could kick the knight away. Can't go there. Or back to there, really. Should we just kick the knight? What's your idea? It's defending this pawn. I do have a pawn I could grab, but it takes my queen out of the business end of the game. So I'm not very keen on that. This pawn can't advance because then I grab this pawn with check. I think kicking the knight makes sense. Or if f6 comes with check, let's play that. Don't see a threat. 2 undefended pawns, 3 undefended pawns. Knight is attacking that, but it's defended twice. Got 2 attackers on this pawn, 2 defenders. This pawn is undefended. All 3 of these are now, so we've both got 3 undefended pawns. In fact, white's got 4 undefended pawns. So where's the knight going to head off to? If it comes back here, then my plan, maybe capture with a rook, think about doubling up my rooks on the open file, looks pretty healthy. So I'm feeling fairly confident. And it's extremely important in chess, when you start feeling fairly confident, not to let up on your evil instincts. You've got to keep your evil on. It's absolutely vital. So I think, actually, the best move is probably knight back to f3. So then we've got 3 defenders on this pawn. Then I may just try and quietly double up my rooks anyway. Let's highlight again. Lots of undefended pawns on the queen side. But grabbing pawns here, I don't think is the way to win. And that's another key kind of mental idea, is to say, okay, look, if I have to win this game at all costs, you know, if this is the most important game of my life, you know, what do I have to do? So that will then dissuade you from just grabbing material because it's there, like so many of us do. This is about winning. So let's say, for example, knight comes back, I play my rook here. I'm not concerned about this, because if I take, then my rook grabs his rook, and then I'm just increasing the value of my material advantage every exchange that's made. So he's definitely having a good old think, isn't he? I do have a significant advantage here with my rooks being connected, because it means that I don't have to worry about a rook capture, because I just recapture. The same would be true if I get them on the same file rather than the same rank, which they are now. If this rook disappears, then possibly capturing this pawn might come with some threats, because then I've got ideas of checks, maybe bringing my rooks in. So if this was a 10-minute game, I would not have had time to have gone into the depth that I've been able to do so far in this game. I'm not worried about this pawn advancing, because I've got queen takes pawn with check. That is an interesting move. Well, 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 well. So he's sacked his knight. So the two obvious moves now are to recapture with the queen or recapture with the king. Recapturing with the king, he can't put his rook there with a pin because it's undefended square. I just capture it and win. If I take with the queen, maybe he pushes a pawn. Maybe I just slide sideways. Capture with the queen, I'm also looking then at this pawn here, which comes with check. We know that. So if queen takes, pawn pushes, I just move my queen back. I'm going to do it time is starting to run down. I've got less than 7 minutes left. I now am up a full rook, but what is white thinking? Yeah, okay, so he's done that. That's fine. Now my queen is defending this solo pawn here, but I'm not too worried. If I move my queen back up, say here, then I'm attacking that pawn, she's attacking that one, and I am fine. Might swing his rook across, that doesn't bother me. So I've got two threats now. I'm attacking that pawn, I'm attacking that pawn, also attacking that one. These are all undefended, as are these. So I think capturing this pawn would be really nice. Deliver check. Then I'd love to simply push my rook up and get my other rook behind it. Okay, he's gone for that one. Right, I'm not going to think twice. Ah, comes a check. Oh, you devil. Okay. Now if I drop my king back here, he hasn't got queen here because I can capture and trade off. I can't block with the rook, so I have to move the king. Where do I move the king? Do I move it forwards or do I move it back? Back to g8. Doesn't worry me. Okay, he might decide now to grab another pawn, but in that case I'll grab that one. And I could very likely get a fork on the king and the rook. Just have to make sure of these dark squares right now, but if queen goes there, that's not too bad. I think this is getting down to desperate times. I'm under 6 minutes now, my opponent's under 8 minutes. But still plenty of time to figure out winning moves. The game could end very, very rapidly if the wrong moves are played. I'm still not interested in these pawns. Now, they're not a threat, and capturing these pawns, although it would count as material gain, makes no difference to the game at all. That's the issue. Capturing this pawn, or this pawn, now that's a different matter, and they are currently both undefended as well. So white's seen that he can't play that, because we just take, and I'm a full rook up, and probably a pawn, one pawn, yeah. No, equal pawns. But a full rook should make for a relatively straightforward ending. Okay. I've got time to grab that pawn with check. I could then also capture that pawn with my rook, thereby defending this one. Right now I have, so these pawns are actually now not defended. Okay, do I want to force the exchange? Is the next question. I think being a full rook up, I'd be an idiot not to. Yeah, it'll double my pawns. But in terms of winning the game, you just have to do what it takes to win the game. And maybe this is what it takes. I'm going to have two rooks now, covering the whole board. I should be able to keep all of my pieces protected. My king can handle these pawns. Then I've only got these three pawns to sort out, and I can double rooks against that e6 pawn, probably. If not, let's say queen takes, pawn pushes, I've got king f7, and then I can win the pawn. So I don't think my opponent has a clear winning idea at this point, and the queens are going to come off the board. Okay, let's do that. King recaptures, I push my rook. So now I'm going to double up rooks behind there. No brainer. And if his rook comes off the board, it's all over. It's really all over. Okay, grab the pawn. He really should not exchange. Exchanges, he's a fool. And resignation. There we go. Whew, there we go. 9 points recovered. So, there you go. Playing it slow. So I've just beaten a 1500 rated player, and whereas earlier on today I've lost games to people in the 1400s. And the reason I think that it's not necessarily that the Goldfish technique, it doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't tell you the best move to make, but it does just, if nothing else, helps you to slow down enough that you can on every move take stock of the board. The idea is, with a Goldfish having, allegedly no memory, which is probably complete nonsense, but the idea is that you have to forget the board and you have to look at the board as though it's for the first time on every single move, as though it's a puzzle that you've been presented with, right? Black to play and win, or black to play and win material, or whatever it may be. That's why puzzles are so good. But very satisfying game. 30-minute game, went all the way down to 5 minutes on the clock for each of us. So thank you to my opponent for a good one. I hope you've got some value out of working through this process with me. I think I need to go and sit down now or take a walk in some fresh air, because the tension was palpable. Thank you for watching, and please do really try and apply this method to your games. I've had people already in comments telling me they've applied this and they've gone up 100, 200 points in rating in just a week by slowing down. Right? You need to find the best moves that you are capable of finding within your knowledge of tactical patterns and position and strategy and all that kind of stuff. So the Goldfish method doesn't make you a better chess player, but it does help you to play the best chess of which you are capable. I'm very happy with that game. I might quickly have a look at the analysis of it, but that's all for now for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because I'm all about trying to help beginners to improve, get to 1,000 rating, 1,100, 1,200 and beyond. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I'll see you soon.